Hello friends, it's Kayla. Today I'm going to talk to you about some upcoming book releases. So every couple months I check in with you here and I tell you about things that are on my radar, books that are from authors that I've read from before or have recently gotten cover reveals or just sound intriguing in some way. Most of the time I haven't actually read the synopsis, so I do that with you and we just talk about them. So that's what we're doing. First, I figured we would start here because this is actually the most recent thing that has been revealed and it's the cover of Tidal Creatures. I talked to you about this before, how I wanted everyone to pick up Seasonal Fears, even though I didn't love it, because I want this series to continue and I want us to get the 4 books that represent all of the things in the middle game universe that Seanan McGuire wants to write. We've known the title for a while. I feel like in my mind, this is the exact cover that I was expecting because it's about the moon. And so the moon on fire fits with the vibe. This is technically called The Alchemical Journeys, the book series. So it's about the alchemical arts. In this one, it says all across the world, people look up at the moon and dream of gods of knowledge and wisdom, gods of tides and longevity. Over time, some of the moon gods incarnated into the human world alongside the other manifest natural concepts. Their job is to cross the sky above the impossible city, the heart of all creation, to keep it connected to reality, and someone is killing them. There are so many of them and it's easy for a few disappearances to slip through the cracks, but they aren't limitless. In the name of the moon, the lunar divinities must uncover the roots of the plot and thwart the true goal of those behind these attacks. Control of the impossible city itself. Okay, it's 528 pages. It's coming out in summer. I feel like the synopsis of the other 2 books very much focused on the characters that we were going to have in them, and we don't really know anything about this unless there's a whole nother synopsis out there for me to read. That was my first time checking that out. I don't know what to think, but I'll obviously be reading it. Next up in early 2024, this might have gotten revealed earlier, but I only just found out about it. It's called The Stranger in Her House by John Mars. It's funny with my relationship with John Mars because I'm so easily swayed away from his books. I picked up the one and loved it, and then I read one other thing and didn't, and now he's come out with quite a few different books and I just have never actually followed through with reading them because the early reviews come in and they sound kind of mediocre. So I have a feeling this will also happen with this one for me. Like, I'll wait to see what other people think of it, but let's find out what it's about. We've got a main character named Paul. Paul's just here to help, or so he claims, sent by a charity for vulnerable people to do odd jobs for an elderly widow. That's Gwen. Gwen's daughter Connie is concerned about Paul. He's a little too kind, a little too involved. The more Paul visits, the more Gwen is relying on him. By the time he conveniently finds himself between homes and has no other choice but to move in, Connie is certain he's trying to push her out. It's her word against his, and her attempts to unmask him become even more desperate, and she's not the only one left wondering if she's lost her grip on reality. It sounds interesting, but we'll see. Next, for authors that I've read from before, we have Riley Sager. This one doesn't have a cover yet, but he has announced he's coming out with another book. There was a moment in time where he said he was taking some time off from writing, and I don't know if maybe that was like a tongue-in-cheek comment or he just changed his mind and needed to write more books. But either way, we're getting another book from Riley Sager, so I'm not committing to this being a Literally Dead book club pick for 2024, but I'm also not saying we won't be doing that. It's coming out in summer. It's called Middle of the Night, and it's his first male protagonist. It says a man must contend with the long ago disappearance of his childhood best friend and the dark secrets lurking just beyond the safe confines of his picture-perfect neighborhood. The worst thing that ever happened on Hemlock Street occurred in Ethan Marsh's backyard. One July night, 10-year-old Ethan and his best friend and neighbor Billy fell asleep in their tent, and Ethan woke up alone. During the night, someone sliced the tent open and had taken Billy. 30 years later, Ethan has reluctantly returned to his childhood home. And now there are all of these weird happenings in the middle of the night, and Ethan has to investigate what happened. It sounds like a pretty traditional plot, but knowing Riley Sager and the last couple of things that he did that got a little wacky by the end, I'll be picking it up, and I can't help but be muchly anticipating it and expecting weird things. This next one was announced a little longer ago, I think, but I only just actually read the synopsis because I saw it on Instagram a couple days ago, and I was like, oh, I do want to read this one. Even though the last Stuart Turton I read was not my favorite, this one's called The Last Murder at the End of the World, and it's tagged as a dystopian crime book, and it takes place on an island. So it says, outside the island, there's a world destroyed by a fog that swept the planet, killing anyone who touched it. On the island, it is idyllic. 122 villagers and 3 scientists live in peaceful harmony. The villagers are content to fish, farm, and feast, to obey their nightly curfew, and to do what they're told by the scientists, until To the horror of the islanders, one of their beloved scientists is found brutally stabbed to death, and they learn the murder has triggered a lowering of the security system around the island, the only thing that was keeping the fog at bay. If the murder isn't solved within 92 hours, the fog will smother the island and everyone on it. But the security system has also wiped everyone's memories of exactly what happened the night before, which means that someone on the island is a murderer and they don't even know it. Isn't that so intriguing? It's 400 pages, so a good length, I think, reminiscent of like the 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle with the memory stuff and the solving crime in a certain amount of time. I think this is going to be for me. Next up, the announcement for the upcoming Leigh Bardugo. So exciting. I didn't love Ninth House, but I wanted to so badly. And so now I feel like I'm going to go into The Familiar with the same idea, even though I haven't read the synopsis yet, but I think it's about vampires. It's got a hand on the cover. I'm officially setting my expectations too high, but let's find out what it's about. In a shabby house on a shabby street in the new capital of Madrid, Lucia uses scraps of magic to get through her day of endless toil as a scullion. But when her scheming mistress discovers the lump of a servant cowering in the kitchen is actually hiding a talent for little miracles, she demands Lucia use those gifts to better the family's social position. What begins as simple amusement for the bored nobility takes a perilous turn when Lucia garners the notice of Antonio Perez, the disgraced secretary to Spain's king. Still reeling from the defeat of his armada, the king is desperate for any advance in the war against England's heretic queen, and Perez will stop at nothing to regain the king's favor. Determined to seize this one chance to better her fortunes, Lucia plunges into the world of seers and alchemists, holy men and hucksters, where the line between magic, science, and fraud is never certain. But as her notoriety grows, so does the danger that her Jewish blood will doom her to the Inquisition's wrath. She will have to use every bit of her wit and will to survive, even if that means enlisting the help of Julian Santagel, an embittered immortal familiar whose own secrets could prove deadly for them both. Okay, apparently this is a standalone. That's interesting. And Leigh said it's inspired by her own family history. I have been getting more into historical paranormal fantasy stuff, so I'll be picking it up. We'll see how it goes. Another author I've read from before, Eric LaRocca, has a book coming out, I think it's an anthology, called This Skin Was Once Mine and Other Disturbances, a brand new collection of 4 intense, claustrophobic, and terrifying horror tales. Okay, that's exciting. So it's like a series of short novellas inside a book. I think I like that idea better than super short stories from this author. I guess I don't know how many pages it is, so I can't really say that. 240. Okay, there is a synopsis that shares like what each story is about, but I'd rather go into it not knowing anything. I will be reading it and I'll be letting you know come spring 2024. Next, we've got a cover I'm absolutely obsessed with. It's called The House That Horror Built by Christina Henry. And it says, a single mother working in the Gothic mansion of a reclusive horror director stumbles upon terrifying secrets. We've got Harry Adams, who's always loved horror movies, so it's not a coincidence that she took the job cleaning a house for this famous movie director. His name's Javier, and he values discretion. And Harry has always tried to clean the house immaculately, keep her head down, and keep her job safe. She needs the money to support her son. But then she starts hearing noises from behind a locked door, noises that sound remarkably like a human voice calling for help, even though Javier lives alone and never has visitors. Harry knows that not asking questions is a vital part of keeping her job, but she soon finds that the forbidding house may be home to secrets she can't ignore. I'm gonna read it. I've really only read one Christina Henry, and I hope this one is a win for me. Next on my list is Goddess of the River by Vaishnavi Patel. I read you the synopsis to this last time, but it didn't have a cover. I don't love the cover as much as Kaikeyi, but I have a feeling I'll love the book just as much. This was 5 stars. And it's a reimagining of the story of Ganga, Goddess of the River, and her doomed mortal son. Another one from an author that I've read, and I don't love the cover as much as the last thing that I read from them, Erin E. Adams. This book is called One of You, and I think I also read you the synopsis last time. A mysterious outsider torments 2 Haitian American sisters, forcing them to confront dark secrets from their family's past in this powerful psychological suspense novel. It just doesn't look like psychological suspense to me. It looks more literary family fiction, but I do feel like based on the synopsis, it will be kind of a mix of both. Then a new T. Kingfisher was announced. It's called A Sorceress Comes to Call. I quite like the cover. It's simple and it's inspired by the Goose Girl dark fairy tale. It says it's rife with secrets, murder, and forbidden magic. We have a main character named Cordelia who knows her mother is unusual. Her mother forces her to be silent and motionless for hours, sometimes days. After a suspicious death in their small town, Cordelia's mother insists they leave in the middle of the night. They flee together. Her mother tries to marry a wealthy older man, and perhaps they're gonna work together to take down her mother, who is an evil witch. The next book in the Singing Hills cycle by Niveau got a cover. It's called The Brides of High Hill. I really like the colors of the cover. And we're following our cleric Chi, as usual, accompanying a beautiful young bride to her wedding to an aging lord at a crumbling estate situated at the crossroads of dead empires. But they're forgetting things they ought to remember, and the lord's mad young son wanders the grounds at night like a hanged ghost. I read a book in the series every year. I love a book in the series every single year. We've got an upcoming horror book next. It's called How to Make a Horror Movie and Survive. And I'm intrigued by it. Though I didn't absolutely love episode 13 by Craig DeLuey, I'm gonna pick up another one from him. It feels like it has a similar vibe. It says it's a darkly humorous horror novel that sees a famous 80s slasher director set out to shoot the most terrifying horror movie ever made, using an occult camera that might be, and probably is, demonic. I like when books give that little summary in just a couple sentences so I don't have to read the entire synopsis, but I get a vibe. Another one I thought I would mention is Rainbow Rowell. I don't own any books from her anymore, but I have read quite a few. But at this point, she hasn't written a full-length adult novel in 10 years, at least under her name. But she just signed a 4-book deal for adult novels, and the first one is set to come out next year. It's called Slow Dance. And it says it's an uplifting novel about star-crossed lovers and the power of second chances. It follows Carrie and Shiloh from their inseparable teen years to their far-flung adulthoods, through her marriage and motherhood and through his time in the Navy, as they try to work out what they're supposed to be to each other. Let me know if you are intrigued by that one. I don't know if I'll pick it up, but I wanted to include it. Next up is The Mystery Writer by Solari Gentile, the author of The Woman in the Library. And this one says, there's nothing easier to dismiss than a conspiracy theory until it turns out to be true. When Theodosia Benton abandons her career path as an attorney and shows up at her brother's doorstep with 2 suitcases and an unfinished novel, she expects to face a few challenges. Will her brother support her ambition? Will he send her back? Will her parents find out? Blah, 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 blah. What Theo never expects is to be drawn into a hidden literary world in which identity is something that can be lost and remade for the sake of an audience. When her mentor, a highly successful author, is brutally murdered, Theo wants the killer to be found and justice to be served. Then the police begin looking at her brother, and Theo does the unthinkable to protect him. But the writer has left a trail, a thread out of the labyrinth in the form of a story. Gus finds the thread and follows it, and in his attempt to save his sister, he inadvertently threatens the foundations of the labyrinth itself. To protect the carefully constructed narrative, Theo Benton and everyone looking for her will have to die. Oh my gosh. That sounds real good. Then let's get into some romance. So really the only romance that ends up on my radar is from authors that I've read from before, because it just feels safest. So I haven't even read the synopsis of this one, but I think the cover's so cute. It's by Farah Rashan, and it's called Pardon My Frenchie. It says Ashanti is ecstatic over the success of her dog boarding business. In fact, it's become so successful that Ashanti has plans to expand her empire with a doggy bake shop. There's just one problem. The building she's had her eye on has just been sold to a surly grandson of one of her favorite customers. Thaddeus is not a dog person. He's barely a people person. But when his grandmother is transferred to a senior living facility that doesn't accept pets, the former army officer agrees to care for her annoying standard poodle, Puddin'. After all, it was his grandmother's help that Thad was able to buy the building that will soon house the PX, a sports bar, all-around hangout space for the former serviceman he plans to open. I don't know if I read that properly, but I guess they're going to be battling over the ownership of this building. That reminds me of something that I read earlier this year called In It to Win It, I think, that I didn't love, but I don't know. Do I want to read this? I'll keep my eye on it and see what people say about it. Then we've got Catherine Center. This one was just announced like today, and I only saw it in my feed on Instagram because Emily Henry was tagged in it, and it was like this build-up reveal of the cover of the rom-commers, and so I assumed that it was going to be a collaborative work between the two. but it wasn't. I still might pick it up, but I need to read the synopsis first. We're following Emma, who desperately longs to be a screenwriter. She spent her life studying, obsessing over, and writing romantic comedies, good ones, that win contests. But she's also been the sole caretaker for her kind-hearted dad who needs full-time care. Now she gets the chance to rewrite a script for a famous screenwriter, Charlie, who happens to be her personal writing god. Emma's younger sister steps in for caretaking duties, and Emma moves to LA for 6 weeks for the writing gig of a lifetime. But what is it they say? Don't meet your heroes? Charlie doesn't want to write with anyone, much less a failed nobody screenwriter. Worse, the romantic comedy he's written is so terrible it might actually bring on the apocalypse. Plus, he doesn't even care about the script. It's just a means to get a different one greenlit. But Emma's not going down without a fight. Okay, so it's gonna be enemies to lovers. I do like the cover a lot. Maybe again, I'll see what other people think before I officially pick it up. I also put The Breakup Pact by Emma Lord on my list, though I can't remember if I've read something from her before, but I like the cover. And it's called The Breakup Pact, which sounds like it's probably gonna be some kind of fake dating situation. So I just wanted to read it and see what happens. Two best friends who haven't spoken in 10 years pretend to date after breakups with their respective exes go viral in this delightful, funny, and deeply emotional new novel. June and Levi were best friends as teenagers until they weren't. Both experienced public, humiliating breakups with their exes that spread like wildfire across TikTok. Then a photo of them together has the internet convinced they're a couple. With so many people rooting for them, they decide to put aside their rocky past and make a pact to fuel the fire. Okay, that sounds fun. Casey McQuiston also has an upcoming book. I haven't loved anything from them, but let's read the synopsis of this one and see if I'm gonna read it. It's called The Pairing. And it says, in this latest romantic comedy, two bisexual exes accidentally book the same European food and wine tour and challenge each other to an international hookup competition to prove they're over each other. And they are over each other, right? I might read it. I'll let you know. Lastly, from authors that I have read from before, the third book in this series. The first book was Dial A for Aunties. I loved it so much. The second book, For Aunties in a Wedding, I didn't. But the third one is called The Good, the Bad, and the Aunties. And I feel like I might just read it. Also, I pronounce aunties and aunties different every single time, apparently. After an ultra-romantic honeymoon, actually this might spoil, well, I don't know if it matters. There's a romance in the book, but it's not a romance book. It's like a cozy mystery. Or not even cozy. It's a wacky mystery book. Basically, Maddie is traveling with her partner to visit their entire extended family. The former beau of one of the aunties is bearing extravagant gifts. He's determined to rekindle their romance. He gives her a gift that was meant for someone else, and she needs to return it. And what should have been a simple retrieval of items turns into disastrous. And suddenly they're stuck as pawns in a decades-long war between Jakarta's most powerful business factions. I might read it if I have nothing else to read. Let's talk about some other wacky sounding things that are from authors I haven't read. I saw this one pop up called The Murder After the Night Before. It's from the same author as How to Kill Men and Get Away with It, which I haven't read yet. And it says, something terrible happened last night. My best friend Posey is dead. The police think it was a tragic accident, but something doesn't feel right. Posey was keeping secrets, and I owe it to her to find out what happened, but I can't remember a thing. I've woken up from a hangover from hell, a stranger in my bed, and to add to all the chaos, I've gone viral for all the wrong reasons, but that won't stop me from getting the truth. I think it's like El Casamano vibes I'm getting from the synopsis from the cover, and I think she's the one that I heard about that one and the next one from as like good comps for Finley Donovan, including this next one called Every Time I Go on Vacation, Someone Dies by Catherine Mack. And it says, all the best-selling author Eleanor Dash wants is to get through her book tour in Italy and kill off her main character, Connor Smith, in the next in her vacation mystery series. Is that too much to ask? Clearly, because when an attempt is made on the real Connor's life, the handsome but infuriating con man she got mixed up with 10 years ago and now can get out of her life, Eleanor's enlisted to help solve the case. Contending with literary rivals, rabid fans, a stalker, and even her ex, Oliver, who turns up unexpectedly, theories are bandied about and rivalries, rifts, and broken hearts are revealed. But who's really trying to get away with murder? This is the first book in an upcoming wacky mystery series. This one also sounds a little bit wacky. The Best Way to Bury Your Husband by Alexia Kazale. It says, sometimes a woman has to take matters into her own hands. Sally never meant to cave her husband's head in with a skillet, or at least she didn't until suddenly she did. But Sally isn't the only woman in town being pushed past her breaking point. When coincidence brings four strangers together, a surprising solidarity is formed. So can they find the best way to bury their husbands and get away with it? There's two covers for this one. Let me know which you prefer. Changing tones completely, this cover is really the reason that I added it. It's called Supplication by Noor Abi Nakul, and it says it's a hallucinatory literary horror set deeply in the consciousness of a woman exploring a changed and frightening world. Our protagonist comes to in a basement, tied to a chair with a man looming over her, but someone has a knife. We follow her as she emerges from captivity into an unnamed nightmarish city, seeking some meaning to her new reality. As figures emerge from the night, some offering sanctuary and others judgment, she keeps moving, making her way through this fever dream of a narrative. Supplication is a haunting, embodied tale of alienation, fear, and the quest for respite. I'm gonna read it. It looks like it sounds. Here's another literary horror kind of book. It's called A Botanical Daughter. I quite like the cover, but I'm a sucker for like flowers and stuff in the hair. It says Mexican Gothic meets the Lie Tree by way of Oscar Wilde and Mary Shelley in this delightfully witty horror debut. A captivating tale of two Victorian gentlemen hiding their relationship away in a botanical garden who embark in a Frankenstein-style experiment with unexpected consequences. The experiment, I think, is a human named Chloe, who gets entangled in their strange household. Told with wit and warmth, this is an extraordinary tale of family fungus and more than a dash of bloody revenge from an exciting new voice in queer horror. I will be reading that. I also saw the cover was revealed for The Honey Witch, which I've read the synopsis to you before by Sydney J. Shields. But I'll remind you just with The Honey Witch is of Incenfree, can never find true love. That is her curse to bear. But when a young woman who doesn't believe in magic arrives on her island, sparks fly in this deliciously sweet debut novel of magic, hope, and love overcoming all. So it's sapphic. The cover is cute. It looks like the kind of book that I feel like is going to get a lot of hype next year. It's going to be really boosted. I also added this one called Rakesfall by Vara Chandrasekhara. It says it's a groundbreaking standalone science fiction epic about two souls bound together from here until the ends of time, from the author of The Saint of the Bright Doors. I don't know what that is. Some stories take more than one lifetime to tell. There are wrongs that echo through the ages, friendships that outpace the claws of death, love that leaves the mark on civilization, and promises that nothing can break. And this is one such story. Enelid and Leveret meet after the war, but before the peace. They found each other in a torn-up nation, peering through propaganda to grasp a deeper truth. And in a demon-haunted wood, another act of violence linked them and propelled their souls on a journey throughout the ages. No world can hold them, no life can bind them, and they'll never leave each other behind. But their journey will not be easy. In every lifetime, oppressors narrow the walls of possibility, shaping reality to fit their own needs. And behind the walls of history, the witches of the Red Web swear that every throne will fall. Yeah, I want to read that. I don't love the cover, but it did draw me in, and I love when a cover pulls me in like that. I just see it scrolling through Instagram, and then the synopsis meets my expectations. Next, oh, I saw that, this doesn't interest me, but it might interest you if you read a lot of horror and you've read things that I've read. I didn't love Baby Teeth by Zoe Stage, but if you did, it's apparently getting a sequel called Dear Hannah. In it, the title character has grown up and is dealing with her stepdaughter's bad decisions and the inevitable and possibly fatal repercussions. So if that interests you, that's a thing. And then I also saw somewhere, I don't have it linked anywhere, I don't know if it's on Goodreads, but somebody said somewhere the bunny is getting a prequel. So I will link anything that I know about that down below. I don't know how I feel about it. I would love to know your thoughts. Obviously, I love Bunny, but I feel like I want this to just stand alone and I don't need to read more. But also, can that book possibly come out and I manage to stay away from it and not fall into the hype, whether from me or from other people? I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do about that. But that's everything that I have for you today. So thank you so much for watching and letting me know anything you think about any of the books that I just mentioned, if you're going to read them, if you like the covers, etc. And if there's any books that you have seen recently announced that I didn't cover that you think I would like, I would love to hear that. And I will see you later.